Hello, everybody. This is Wizards of Ox Live. We are back after a long pause due to multiple things, including the publication of a chapter by Susan Owens. If you haven't seen it, I would highly suggest that you take a look at it. You can, we'll put in the notes the link where you can solicit, the paper so that you can look at it. And it's all about the use of supplements. And we're going to be talking a little bit about that. So congratulations, Susan. That was a lot of work. And we're very, very proud of you. I'm very grateful for the work that you do and you put out there in the scientific realm. And the three of us are the three of the other wizards. So Monique, Carla, and I, we have some news at the end that I think you're going to find useful concerning the support for the diet and the learning of all of this with the diet. But so there's been lots of news, lots of personal ups and downs like everybody, but we're ready to go. And we decided to start again with theme that I think has been reflected in a lot of the comments and the posts that you have submitted to the group, which is I am overwhelmed. I don't understand what I'm doing. I've gone too far, too fast. I need support. So with that in mind, we made a very simple presentation. It's basically 5 points that we're going to be talking briefly about. And then we're going to open it a little bit to questions and seeing if we can get a lot of that confusion and bring just some clarity and some ideas to keep in mind all the time when you're starting on this lower oxalate journey. So with that, I guess, Monique, we can just get started with the presentation.
Okay, perfect. Let me share it. All right. Slide 1, let me get it up so that I can see the controls at the bottom. Away we go. All right. We are going to be talking about lowering oxalate for the overwhelmed. You are most likely a beginner if you're overwhelmed. Your entire worldview on food has been tossed on its head, and you're trying to figure out what the heck you should be doing. If this describes you, we have your back here. So we are going to help with a little bit of kind of the high level basics, because everybody can be very unique, but the high level basics of how to get started the right way. All right.
Monique, I don't see the presentation. I only see a black screen.
Yeah. I was wondering about that because I saw that for a second, and that should not be what you guys are seeing. One more time. Give me a second. I'll stop the sharing. We'll see if I can get it so that it's looking the way it's supposed to look. Deep breath. Where'd it go?
But in the meantime, if you want to tell us, if you have any particular questions that we want to take a look at, you can use a chat and we can, start looking at them and be preparing, some sort of an answer by the time we finish.
Okay, can you see the slides now?
No.
This is not helping at all.
Do you want to put me as a co-host and I can try?
I had this thing up and running just a second ago, so not sure why it's doing it. So just give me just a, let me try one more time and see if I'm just picking up. Oh, wait a minute. I should be able to see my desktop. Can you see this now?
Yes.
Now we
Yes,
can.
we can.
Awesome. Okay. It was just not
Not
picking
full
up.
screen though.
Yep. Gonna do that now.
Perfect.
We're still good? Excellent. By the wonders of editing, we may have my son take that out. Okay, so back to lowering oxalate for the overwhelmed. We just want you to get started in a way where you're going to be as gentle on yourself as possible, as cautious with anything that's going to start you down the path of a new diet. And Susan commented before we were recording that one of the things here that everybody's got to consider is how most of our experience with diets is all or nothing. Do you want to say a little bit more on that, Susan, just so that we set people up for the right orientation as they're coming into low oxalate?
Well, sure. I mean, one of the things that when I do consults, I have people write down what their history is. And many of them say this is like the third or fourth diet that they've started. And the other diets tend to be ones that are all or nothing. So when you join that diet, you have to completely stop eating something. And it's very black and white. And I think one of the most difficult things about starting to reduce oxalate is the fact that you're taking a long time to get to where you're heading. That you do not eliminate all of the oxalate all at once, because when you do that, the dumping experience is too difficult and painful and terrible. And so we want you to do everything very slowly. And I think, Monique, from seeing your slides, that there's a huge emphasis on going slow. And that is very, very important.
There is a real theme here. So we're going to start out with our little friend on the left-hand side of your screen. Lowering oxalate is not a sprint. It is a marathon. So the thing about running a marathon is you have to conserve your energy. You have to make sure that you are not exhausting yourself before you complete. And that's really relevant here. You have to do low oxalate in a way, you have to lower oxalate in a way that respects your personal health history, your personal resilience, and which doesn't overstress you so that you get to a point where you're having such a miserable experience with the diet, it's harder on you to do it than it is to perhaps take a break from it. So there's lots of aspects to this, but certainly lowering gently, lowering slowly is really important. Then
I think one thing to remember is that oxalate doesn't accumulate overnight.
Yeah,
And
great perspective.
it's not going to come out overnight. So the goal is to, again, like Monique mentioned and like Susan mentioned, is to lower in a way that you can still function with.
Yeah, so it's manageable. Yeah. So with that in mind, we have some beginning steps for people who have gone down the oxalate rabbit hole and find themselves in this place. And we'll be talking more about these, but this is the 5 basic things as you come in the door. So starting with minerals as a gentle and relatively easy place where you can add nutrient to your body that will be helpful in the entire process to help you weather dumping as dumping gets going, to help you begin to feel better even as you come in the door. Then probiotics to support your gut, because your gut has been impacted by oxalate, but also some of us may not have much oxalate degrading capacity. Probiotics can help you there. So in a sense, you're already kind of lowering oxalate if you're getting rid of some of it in the gut and you're not absorbing it. Only number 3, not number 1, not number 2, number 3 taper down your highest oxalate foods, slowly replacing them with lower oxalate alternatives. 6+ months to take you down to a fully medium to low oxalate diet is a great time frame to think about here. So it's definitely not your all or nothing, black or white, immediately hit the target approach. As you're reducing oxalate, evaluate your supplements. Evaluate if you're an endogenous producer. And we had a little chat ahead of the video today, talking a little bit about interactions you might want to think about. So we'll talk more about that as we get to that part of the presentation. And this is going to be an ongoing learning. The science in this area, I would say, is rapidly changing, rapidly growing. There's so much going on. And you have wonderful humans like Susan Owens who are continuing to help connect the dots. So let's just consider that you're starting out from some sort of baseline, but there's going to be things that you're going to include over time. You're going to grow your understanding, and that might change how you manage your diet, what supplements you take. So we're not assuming you're going to get everything right the first moment. And we're not assuming you're going to be doing the same thing forever. Yeah, Carla.
One of the things that you can do, I would say maybe as a sub-step between 2 and 3, or, while you're starting the minerals and adding in the probiotics, go slow with that and ramp yourself up. But while you're doing that, evaluate what your current diet is. So when you actually start to taper down, my highest food, my highest oxalate food is Swiss chard. I can taper that gradually. My highest food is spinach or sweet potatoes. So you can start thinking about how you're going to reduce before you start reducing. So you have some kind of plan in the works before you implement it.
And you might even go through your cabinets and go through your refrigerator and figure it out. That'll help.
That's what we did.
Yeah, kind of peg your oxalate intake. So we were sort of assuming a bunch of things by saying tapering down your highest oxalate foods. That's actually a multi-step, if you will, because you have to be learning about where the oxalate is in your diet to be able to then determine who your high oxalate players are in your diet, and then have a plan for how you're going to reduce those. So
the biggest message here is just to go slowly. You're not in a rush. And remember that it was a tortoise who won the race. So just keep that image in mind, and then we'll just continue.
So pattern over precision. For those of you who are used to doing all or nothing diets, or things are treated as an allergy or an intolerance, and so you have to avoid completely, this is not that kind of diet. You cannot do this one perfectly. There's lots of reasons for that. Growing conditions may affect the oxalate in the particular instance of food in front of you. We don't have solid averages for oxalates in foods. We might have 4 or 5 data points. They might be different enough that you might not feel very confident about a food. There's so many things that can be impacting where your oxalate is in your diet, how much of it there is, the kinds of food sources that you've depended on. Like, there's just so many things here. So the idea is not perfection. The idea is to bias your diet in the direction of lower oxalate. So look for foods where the pattern of the data about that food hovers in an area that's lower, and then with that. Okay. Remember that at each step, you're changing your body's homeostasis. So let's do that in a way that respects where you are, how your body is even adapted to the diet that you've been eating, so that we do it slowly, you see benefits, and you reduce negative impacts. That's always going to be preferable for all of us. Anybody want to tackle our friends, the minerals? No? You want to jump in, Carla? You want to have a little airtime?
Nah, I'll have airtime coming up, so.
Okay.
But
Okay,
Um,
I can handle it if you want to. So
I just didn't want to hog the floor.
that's all right. So basically the idea why minerals is important is because of what oxalate does in your body. Oxalate is a preferred dancing partner. You know, when it's inside your body circulating, is going to want to pair up with something with a positive charge. And that is basically your minerals. So you have lots of minerals that are going to be like handy for your oxalate Pac-Man, so to speak. So you're going to be making all these, so you have this oxalate circulating and it's going to be hoarding the minerals, which are going to make them unavailable. So when you have an oxalate issue, your use of minerals and the way where it's coming into the cell is also going to be blocked by oxalates. So they're going to be using the same type of transporters, and it's just going to be making very complicated to be able to use those minerals. And so some of the minerals that are really affected are things that are very, very important for the function of your body. So you have sodium, you have magnesium, you have potassium, you have iron, zinc, you have iodine. And all of these, you know, if the transporters are affected, they cannot get to where they need to be. And that's a big problem. And when you increase the intake of your minerals, then you have a little bit more available so that we can have the possibility of your body having some of those resources to function better. And a lot of the things that we see when people report that they're feeling bad or they're having really terrible symptoms, it's because their metabolism is not turning. So, you know, it's not going through the process the way it should. And one of the things that can help is to start, you know, having these cofactors, these ingredients available so that the body can do the job that it knows how to do.
Yeah. So
Uh,
go ahead, Susan.
I would just like to say that there are two of the minerals that are kind of special relating to oxalate. One of them is iodine, because iodine crosses the membrane on some of the same transporters that oxalate does. And so it's interfering and it's substituting. And so that makes it where when the body is going, like when your thyroid gland is saying, I need more iodine, it may be actually getting a lot of oxalate because your oxalate's high. And so that's why it's kind of tricky. If you're coming in, and an awful lot of people come to our group and they're already hypothyroid. Have you heard that a lot, ladies?
Oh gosh, all the time.
Absolutely.
Almost, I would say 90% of my clients, if not 95% of my clients, are already hypothyroid when they get to me.
And
I
that's
certainly
why.
was.
That's
I
why.
was starting the diet.
Yeah. And then another issue is that it has been found out that the way that we get iron from the blood into cells is this molecule called transferrin. And scientists have found that transferrin actually kind of artificially uses oxalate as an ion inside the structure, and it will bind the iron, but it's normally supposed to release the iron when it gets inside your cell. And if oxalate got into there, it won't release it. So, it's kind of strange because it's not really reducing the amount of iron that's there. It's just reducing its availability.
Yeah.
Right. And so, especially if you're one of these people that, you've been to the doctor and he said, oh, your ferritin is really low. I mean, you need to think about that as one of the mechanisms that got you there.
Okay. Good. So starting off with minerals for a very good reason. And then we want to talk a little bit about the intestinal microflora. What do you think, Patricia? Isn't this your baby?
This is my baby.
This is
Absolutely.
your baby. So I'm sure Carla and Susan and I can let you have this slide.
Actually, the microbiome is what makes the balance, and actually it adapts to make sure that whatever you're eating is feeding whatever your body is needing. Because today you might be eating cauliflower that's very rich in a nutrient, and tomorrow you're eating something that doesn't have any, and your body is needing the same things more or less to function in a different way. What adapts is your microbiome. So it's the one that actually makes sure that you're getting everything that you need. And it's really, really important. Now, for the microbiome, oxalate is a toxin. So it's something that it's going to see in its environment. It's going to affect the environment of your gut. It's going to change the conditions of germination of that microbiome, and it's going to be affecting it. And when you're affecting it, you're affecting also the possibility of your body to adapt and have all these functions of adaptation. And so the other thing is that many times, especially when you see children with autism, it's something that we see very, very often. You give them a lot of probiotics, and then when you get the lab reports, there's nothing as acidophilus, there's nothing as bifidus. And you're like, how is that possible? Well, we have in our gut, we have like different families that do different jobs and specialize in different things. But the maintenance of the entire biome, it's the number one priority for everybody. So if you have something like an oxalobacter that specializes in eating oxalate and getting rid of it, but because of an antibiotic treatment, because of whatever circumstance you have, you don't have some of those, and the conditions in the gut are raised with oxalate, everybody else who can eat it will, even to the detriment of their own life. So that's why you start getting a lot of these lower numbers, because the acidophilus, the bifidus, and some other families can eat it. It's not their preferred food. It's not something that they would do if they could, have an alternative, but they will do it to preserve that whole environment. So we have, I'm at the university, I'm sorry, I think there's a class that just got lost, but so we need to support the gut, and we can support it, bringing some of those families that are going to help us manage that oxalate that it's on its way out, and preventing it also from causing extra inflammation that is also going to cause that some more is going to be absorbed. It's a very complex balance that it's happening in the gut. And Susan is giving me these looks, and I don't know why. But
well, I just want to say that oxalate's normal for bacteria. It's not abnormal, it's normal, it's part of their world. And the thing is about us, our body is not supposed to deal with oxalate like in our blood and in our tissues. We're supposed to deal with it in our gut, where we have the bacteria that are taking care of it. And so it is an issue of, whose job is it? The job is the microbes are the ones that are needing to deal with the oxalate, and they have this very complex community. And some of the new research, rather than thinking that degrading oxalate is a really specialized function, now more and more the research is showing, no, it's really all over the place. Like, it takes a very complex community to deal not only with the oxalate, but the byproducts that are formed when oxalate is degraded. And so it's all, a great big complex community.
It's like a city.
Yeah,
So
it's like a city.
everybody has like different jobs, but if there's a problem, different families or different people are going to be taking care of the situation to make sure that your gut is in the best situation possible to do all the works that it needs to do. So if we help it, supporting with some families, some members of different families that we know help to degrade the oxalate, then that's also another piece of the puzzle that is going to help us not feel overwhelmed, not feel too terrible, and not overwhelm also the capacity of our gut. So we have some, yes.
Oh, I was just going to say that the human experience changed drastically after World War II when we introduced antibiotics and antifungals. Because before that, think about, 1,000 generations of human beings. I mean, how many were there where we did not have any of that? And so suddenly we have drastically changed everything with using these antimicrobials. And we simply didn't have the technology to understand a lot of it. And so now, kind of after the fact, the scientists have developed techniques to start studying it. And we're like, oh my gosh, what did we do? Because we ventured very quickly into something that we didn't know enough about. And so that's why, you may have had a grandparent that was like, oh, I can eat Swiss chard, I can eat this or that. And you're thinking, well, why can't I eat it? Well, it's because we don't have the same microbes that your grandparents did.
Yes. So some of the things that we can use bifidos and we can use acidophilus. And in our project, we had some very, very good results reported with a probiotic that was called VSL3 before. It is not called that anymore. And the product has actually changed. The current name of that probiotic that that many of the list members have had very, very good results with is called Visbiome in the US, in Canada, and it's called Vivomix in Europe. So, but that one is very potent with multiple strains of bacteria. So you want to start with very, very, very tiny amounts and start building yourself up.
When we say tiny, we're talking about a pinch.
Yeah, or even
Yes.
less.
We're not talking about starting off with the whole capsule. Just be careful about that.
Yes.
And actually, for those of you who are feeling overwhelmed, there are things called spice measuring spoons where you can get a spoon that is 1/64th of a teaspoon. That may be the kind of place to start, where you've got just a tiny little bit out of that capsule and you sprinkle that on your food and you see how your body handles that. Because the other thing we need to keep in mind is that where your gut microbiome is right now is how it's shifted and moved to adapt to what it's been encountering as fuel, as food. And so you don't necessarily want to shift it away too quickly because it has adapted to where it is to try and handle what you've been feeding it. So slow, careful movement is again the order of the day here.
Some
Yes.
probiotic companies that sell the bottles of the powdered probiotic actually give adult and baby spoons that, and you can use those, and I would start with a baby spoon.
Yeah, I'm into that.
I'm going to ask which probiotic were we talking about? It's this biome in the
Visbiome.
US and Canada and Vivo Mix in Europe.
Those used
Yeah,
to be
it's the
BSL3.
same probiotic, but different name in the different markets.
Yeah. And someone was asking about the name of the probiotic we mentioned. It's on the slide there. So,
And I'll put it in the chat so you can just continue.
okay, that would be great because that way we help anybody who's looking for names and directions here. All right, which takes us to, you've built up some resilience, you've added minerals, you've started to look at at the oxalate values of foods, what's low, what's high. Now we're going to say, now, of course, you've already taken some steps and you've done some learning. Now determine your highest oxalate food and perhaps go even one food at a time, just so it's really clear what you're removing. Go slowly. Go slowly as makes sense for you. So if you are reducing oxalate and you're feeling lousy, you may stop, hold the line, let whatever oxalate dumping is happening, and then continue. There's nothing that says that once you get started, you just have to keep going and you can never give yourself a break. So common high oxalate foods that you could have in your diet right now: chia seeds, spinach, almonds, other nuts. I've got chia seeds in here twice. Plantain, because chia seeds are really bad. A lot of people are liking them these days. Chaga mushroom is a new one, which
Really
most of us should be avoiding. Beets, black beans. These kinds of things, especially when you're using them as staples in your diet, can be adding a lot of oxalate. And typically people have a very predictable shopping list. So I would say for those who are feeling really overwhelmed, think about your shopping list. What you're eating really regularly, that's really where you're looking for some of these big heavy hitters. Something you're having once in a blue moon may not be something that you have to worry about, but where you're eating something daily, it's very high and you're eating it in substantial portions, those kinds of things we might want to look at. And we've got a little quote here from a client of Carla's: happily lowering oxalate one French fry at a time, because we want to give you some inspiration here. So go, Carla. Let's talk about Rebecca.
Well, I have a client named Rebecca who is, we'll say, medically fragile. She has a seizure disorder, she has a heart defect, and Down syndrome. And her seizures are not, at this point, when we met, they were not very well controlled. She was having multiple seizures a week, even on anti-seizure medication. She already knew that oxalate could have an impact on seizures, so she was interested in doing the diet, and I've been working with her and her family, along with her neurologist, to lower her oxalate, but to do it very slowly, because too quick a reduction could trigger dumping, which could trigger seizures, and that's really not what we want. So French fries are her big item. She loves them, and she stated quite rightly she has no intention of giving them up. She'll reduce, but she's not going to give them up. So we have got her literally lowering her oxalate. You know, you get your burger with your fries, and you know, step one, okay, eat all the fries. You're gonna eat them anyway. The next time you have fries, you throw one of those fries away. Or, you know, you put it in a Ziploc baggie and store it for later. The next time you have fries, it's 2, then it's 3, then it's 4. And we work you down with that food. You know, you're not lowering anything else at this point, just that food, to where you're at, you know, 10 French fries, because that's medium oxalate and doable. And it's gradual enough to where it hasn't triggered seizures. She's down to like 20 at this point. But, you know, she walked in, you know, to one of our meetings and told her neurologist, I'm happily lowering oxalate 1 French fry at a time. And for the next item, we'll probably do something again very similar. You know, it'll be, you know, baby steps, you know, because of her specific situation. Do you need to really lower that quickly? Maybe not, but there's nothing wrong with doing it that way either.
You know, a big issue is know yourself. If you're somebody who's very black and white and like, just tell me what to do and tell me what to totally eliminate, then you may need to be working on this diet a little bit differently. And if you need help, find somebody. It doesn't necessarily have to be one of us wizards. I mean, it may be just somebody on the group that you can talk to that can, you know, kind of be your buddy and help you on the reduction part.
Yeah. And don't think that you're not doing anything. If you're doing it slowly, you're probably doing yourself a really big favor.
Yeah, absolutely. Unfortunately, all of us here have at one point or another spoken with someone who had taken their oxalate down too quickly and was in crisis. What we really want to emphasize here is that there is no ribbon at the end of a race where you got oxalate out of your diet fast. The only ribbon is the one that says I'm healthy on it, and you want that one at every step. So really, we want to give you permission to do this at the speed that makes sense for you. And the more fragile you are medically, the more likely you should be going slower. For some of us, we did it really fast. We weathered the storm. But in hindsight, if I could have done it in a different way so that, you know, we didn't have some of the fallout that we did, we were, in my family, 2 of us bounced into ER. That's not what any of us want to be doing. So ideally, you come down slow enough and carefully enough that all you're seeing is benefits at each step, even if you have some stressors with it, which, you know, we can't. Oxalate's toxic. It's not going to be nice to you as it leaves. So yeah, we're going to have some stressors, but it doesn't have to be unmanageable.
And it can be a trade-off. We have a member on Groups IO who started the diet from a ketogenic diet. She was diagnosed with chronic kidney disease. And she decided, you know, I can either lower oxalate slowly, maybe continue to put my kidneys at risk, or I can go more quickly. And she opted to go more quickly. And she would, you know, she said, yeah, it wasn't fun. You know, it was not an experience that I enjoyed, but my kidney health, you know, getting my kidney health restored was more important than the discomfort. You know, you may have to make those, you know, those kinds of cost benefit analysis. But, you know, if you can go slow and you're not in a situation where you're in a severe health crisis, you know, we do recommend, go as slow as you can, and as your body lets you, you'll know when you can increase a little, your reduction a little bit more, or your body is going to tell you, ooh, that was too fast. So let's stop here and go a little bit slower. Or, you're doing a slow reduction and things are working great and you just want to maintain.
Exactly.
Okay, so review your supplements. At some point, for the vast majority of us, some supplements will be required because we may need more of nutrients to help us both cope with the work that oxalate's going to make for us, and also help to correct maybe ongoing insufficiencies or deficiencies that we've got because of the kinds of impacts that oxalate may have had on us. So as you start to lower, let's think about what kinds of nutrients you might need. So how is your diet? We do want you to eat a good variety, nutrient dense, preferably lower in any kinds of stressors that might apply to you. So as you're lowering oxalate, you're bringing down that stressor, but you may also need to lower other kinds of, say, food-borne chemicals or toxins, because it's not necessarily just about capsules and tablets. We can bias our diet to get us some additional nutrients. We also want to look at, are you already taking some supplements? Do you have a history of taking supplements? When I started this diet, I had been taking various things like a B complex and omega-3s and minerals. I'd been doing stuff like that for a very long time. So you may want to tweak those. You might have to look at, if you haven't been taking supplements, getting started with things. You might also have to look at what you are taking, because there are supplements like vitamin C, which might need to be reduced. You don't actually need more of this. You might want to look at alternatives to vitamin C, because vitamin C actually degrades into oxalate. So rather than having to think about that really early, let's slowly come into that and start to review what you are taking, and if you're not taking, what maybe you should be looking at. In this area, depending upon where your health is at, you might need to consider different kinds of interactions. Oxalate interactions with things that you're taking, drug interactions, and supplements. There are resources that can help you with this. Textbooks and things. We can put some links to that. Susan's got a favorite though, so we'll let Susan jump in on this one too. So,
well, a resource is available to anybody, and it is divided where, if you're a professional, you can, click on the professional link, or if you're just a regular person, you can click on that link. But what you do is you put into their field every drug that you're taking. Okay. And then it will look at the drugs and look at if there are interactions. And also, it even looks at how those drugs might interfere with food. Like there's some drugs that you don't want to take grapefruit with, things like that. And so it is just an easy thing for anybody to do.
And that's just drugs.com, right? Like it's also really easy to find.
It's so easy to find. And, especially, you may think that your doctor has been following this, but my experience in talking to people is that a lot of times people will have multiple doctors, and each one will give them a different list of drugs to take. And sometimes they're giving them the same, something that has the exact same activity. And basically they're taking twice as much as they ought to, because this doctor doesn't know what that doctor prescribed. So, hopefully if you go to the same pharmacist, your pharmacist may catch some of those things. But these days, a lot of times people will go to multiple pharmacies because they get a better price at this one on this drug and a better price at a different one. And so if you're in the place where there's nobody monitoring drug interactions, then absolutely go to drugs.com and check that out.
Yeah. But I would actually say I personally had some experience where I wanted to make sure that there wasn't a problem with a prescription med that I was on. And I went to a pharmacist, and sometimes they are amazing because you don't have to pay to ask them a question. It's not like it's a bunch of expense for you to figure it out, which was very helpful because a lot of us who have been very sick, we know how expensive it is to be sick too. So don't underestimate your local pharmacist, especially if you've got all your prescriptions at one place. They are sometimes the best backup in terms of making sure that your doctor's not doing something funny. But, being able to say to them, look, I take blah, blah, blah supplement. Am I okay with that, with this prescription? And oftentimes they can answer you in 5 minutes.
And I'll just throw this out that I ended up finding out if I went, like I had a pharmacy that was a 24-hour pharmacy. And I found out if I showed up at 11 o'clock or 11:30 at night, there was nobody else around. And so then I could actually talk to that pharmacist and, find out what she knew that I needed to know. And that was a fabulous thing. We actually ended up getting to be friends.
Well, there you go. Make friends with your pharmacist.
Really. And it was needed in my family. So, think about that. It's a resource that's available to you.
So if you're currently not taking any supplements, approach this again slowly, be carefully thoughtful. But with that in mind, we've already talked a little bit about minerals. Oxalate being the bad guy that it is and doing things like affecting your mitochondria, that's a place where you might need some support. And maybe an amino acid like carnitine might be a nice add. Again, if you buy plain powders with these things, you can start with little tiny amounts and see how your body handles it. And then we often refer to the fact that oxalate seems to particularly require what I call the three musketeers: biotin, B1, and B6. And biotin is, one of those ones where it might trigger some dumping, but B6 is really big here. So, coming in slowly with these small amounts. And I don't know, Susan, would you normally suggest biotin before B1 to make sure that you've built that backstop to the B1 biochemistry? Yeah. So we're kind of looking at this kind of order too. So start small though, kind of be ready to pay attention to what your body says about a dose. But these are ones that sort of generally, more generically, you might need because of what oxalate can be doing in your body.
And I want to throw out another idea is that a lot of people have been convinced into taking B complex. And a lot of those B complexes are like 50 milligrams each or 100 milligrams each.
Big doses.
There is nothing magic about 100 milligrams. And that is an enormous dose of some of those.
It's an enormous dose, yeah.
And so it's much, much better if you want to slowly figure out where your body is, to start with something like a children's B complex or a children's vitamin. And that way you can get a very tiny amount, and then you can control the amount and you can build it up, and then you can start looking at individual vitamin requirements like biotin. Like biotin generally is very low in most multis. It's very low. And biotin is taken in such small amounts that most formulas are 1% biotin and 99% something else. And sometimes even when you're taking that, you're reacting to the other 99% thing, whatever that is that they put the biotin into. And so be really careful also about, you know, additives. I did, we had a Wizards of Ox things where I presented information where I went through all of my vitamins and I measured what they weighed, and then I measured what was said on the outside of the bottle about what it contained, including the substance that you were taking, like biotin or B1 or whatever. And I found out that in most vitamins, 50% of the weight of the capsule or tablet was something else. And
Yeah,
so,
additives or bulking agents or
yeah. And so you might find that you have a problem with one of the bulking agents or, you know, the other things that are in there. So play, if you find that you have a reaction to a supplement when you introduce it, then look more carefully at what the additives are and try a different brand.
Yep. Yep. Okay. So tips and tricks. If we haven't said go slowly enough times, please go slowly. The most important thing here is that it's manageable for you and that you can handle your life. If what you're doing is knocking you completely off your feet, that is not to your advantage. Please remember that you do not have to be perfect. And this is maybe a soft thing that we want you to do as opposed to the hard, more scientific supplements and diet and things like that. But I really think part of what we can need is to regain trust in our own bodies. And in order to do that, you kind of need time to learn and to recognize what is working and to see that your body still has the capacity to respond. So it's not about perfection. It's not about it's going to be perfect right out of the gate. It's going to be a learning experience, and that's going to take time, and it's going to take discernment as to what's working best for you. I will put out a plug for us here. When in doubt, get help. Consider a consult with a wizard. You are looking at 4 women who between us have almost 80 years of experience with the oxalate diet, with immersing ourselves in this world. And so there's a lot of expertise that you have right in front of you here. Consider appropriate testing like an oat to give you more information so that you can make good decisions. Our very own Susan Owens has analyzed over 1,800 oats, can give you some very good
More than
perspective.
2,000 now.
Was it? Oh gosh, I'm way behind. Okay, over 3,000. I'll update
No,
my
2,000, about
2,000.
about 2,200 or something.
Okay. So that's a lot of perspective, folks, in terms of the kind of information that you can get from an oat. So that's another option. And obviously we have the Trying Low Oxalates group. There's lots of resources on there. We know they're not always as easy to find as we'd like them to, but there's lots of good reading to be done. And our Wizards of Ox YouTube channel now has sessions like this where we've discussed different topics and where you can do some of that immersive learning. So don't underestimate what you might have at your fingertips. And even if you happen to be one of those folks who has the middle of the night insomnia, you can always go do some reading when you can't sleep. Okay, so our last slide, we wanted to talk a little bit about our new baby. Do you want to chat a little bit more on this, Patricia, as well? Because
Sure.
you've done a little poking around on our new platform too.
We've been looking at many things, and we've been listening, really listening to all of the comments and a lot of the frustration when it's difficult to find information that you're looking for, when it's not easy to download it or print it or share it. I think there is something to be said about being present in an open social media like Facebook, because that's where people are actually looking for us. And we've been putting out a lot of information in there. But I think once you've found us, I think it's worth considering that to have a learning platform, someplace that it's really user friendly and that it's going to allow you to get access to all of the information in a very simple and intuitive way. And for us also to be doing, some really beautiful organizing. We have Monique that in her first career, before she became the LOAX coach, she is a master of library science. And we're looking into, trying to organize the knowledge base of these 80 years that she was talking about in a very intuitive package where people are going to be able to find things easily and not feel overwhelmed as much.
The problem with Facebook is that we don't have the ability to do certain things that we want to. That platform's under somebody else's control and management, and that's, I think all of us can agree that, it's great to be available and free and be able to have an environment that's provided for us like that, but it's definitely got its limitations, and some people need more hand-holding.
And also they change things all the time and we don't know when they're going to do it. They certainly don't ask us.
No, yeah, so we don't
Absolutely.
have control of it. Yeah, go ahead, Carla, or sorry, Patricia. I was like, I just
So
realized
basically, the idea is that this is going to be a beautiful learning platform where we will be targeting those specific issues that people are having trouble with in a very user-friendly way, basically. We'll also be talking, about our own experiences, and we're going to be talking about the different things. We're probably joining also some of the common topics like, like autism and vulvodynia and pain, mast cell, and so that people can meet each other and be able to share best practices and things like that, have a place where we can have testimonials and people can read those testimonials and read what has worked and be able to find those things back. Because that's one of the things, sometimes we have great posts with people saying all sorts of really interesting things. And then sometimes even as admins, trying to find that post back is a challenge. So we want to tell you that we are listening to you and that we will be launching this very soon. The architecture is being laid out as we speak.
Yeah. So we're hoping that for those of you who do want more of a chance for some more personal attention on a group like our TLO group, which we all love dearly, but we have almost 70,000 people on it now. It's really difficult for us to do the kind of more close support. And so we're kind of hoping that we'll be able to provide that for those who need it. Lots of people can do it on their own. I did it on my own back in the day, but not everybody wants to sort of feel like they are
alone and overwhelmed.
And overwhelmed. And so we're actually talking to you folks, the overwhelmed, here we are. Anyway.
And we prepared for you a simple infographic with some of the main points.
Right.
Some of us are auditory learners, some of us are visual learners. And so we're trying to provide materials for the different types of learning as well. So you've seen us, you've heard, what we have to say, and now we're going to show you also what, okay, here it is. So this is something that I'm going to be posting now in the chat. and it's going to be available also in the Facebook group. But as you know, it's been really difficult for you in the group to be able to download it, and it's been difficult to print it and to, you know, have access in another moment. So if I was you, I would just, you know, I will put it now in the chat, and before you leave, make sure you download it so that you have something to put on your fridge and have as a reminder of those 4 basic points that we want to you to think about: minerals, the gut population, the food tapering down slowly, and the supplements. And remember also that this is a marathon and not a sprint.
Yeah.
And with that, I'm going to put it in the chat. And if there's any questions, I guess we can stop the recording now, Monique. And if there's any questions, I guess we can open the mic.
Yep, so we'll close down the video for now, folks. We'll be back in a couple of weeks, and looking forward to this season's set of interesting topics. If you have interesting topics you'd like us to talk about, you can feel free to get us a message either through the Triangle Oxalates group or our email, and we can have that in the notes as well. But for now, we will wish you all the best. Hope if you are one of our new people that this is really helpful, and we will be back in a couple of weeks.